Well, let's talk about water and how that relates to economics, and how some residents in Pennsylvania are actually self-rationing, or so it sounds. Fascinating story. It's great reporting from Pennsylvania. We're very pleased to be joined by Center Square's Northeast Regional Editor Christen Smith. Christen, thanks so much for joining us today. And let's talk about the water situation in Pennsylvania. We've heard in the past about droughts affecting some of the southern states like Georgia, California, when there have been issues there. What in the world's going on in Pennsylvania, and why would people be very concerned about taking showers or perhaps not even flushing the toilet?
Well, unlike those regions, it's not a natural disaster. It's corporate takeovers of public water systems. This is something that's been on the rise in Pennsylvania since 2016, and it's having a lot of unintended consequences in the decades since. And so now we've come to a place where people are limiting showers and flushing the toilets less often. You have people who are experiencing their water bills doubling. In one case of a man in Exeter, he pays $175 a month for just himself. Another family pays $275 for 3 people. So these are exorbitant prices, particularly for those who are living on fixed incomes and who are already dealing with higher property taxes, higher electricity rates, higher costs for groceries, and now higher costs for water.
And we've had somewhat of an issue like this in Illinois come up last year, where municipalities have sold off their water systems, and people have seen bills increase. In some cases in Illinois, the actual water quality went down with some people in the north and northwest suburban area around Chicago. What's the response there from these private water companies, and how can they justify these rates going so high compared to what they were as part of a municipal water system?
Their argument is that it's a snowball effect of buying these public systems that have been neglected for decades. There's been a reticent to invest and raise rates over the years from local officials who are worried about things like re-election. So these water companies are coming in and saying, hey, to get these systems up to snuff to prevent further fines or water pollution, they need to invest in these systems, and ratepayers unfortunately have to help pay for that investment. There is a case out in 2019. There was a lack of upgrades to a system out there in Exeter, and they were having failing equipment, repeated overflows. In one case, there was a $4 million gallon sewage spill. So these are a lot of things that these water companies have to address, and it takes millions upon millions of dollars, and they can't absorb that all to themselves, they said. So that this is truly a safety issue from their perspective, but it's obviously something that residents weren't prepared for when this law was enacted.
Christen Smith at thecentersquare.com. Christen, reporter for Turner, talked with a number of people dealing with these bills, and one individual said his bill actually doubled, and you gave one number that was pretty high, but some of these numbers are eating up to near $300. And here in Illinois, Greg Bishop and I will complain about affordability issues, but you're blowing us out of the water, pun intended, when it comes to these water bills. What's the fix here? What's the solution? Is there anything people in public office can do?
Lawmakers aren't entirely sure of the solution. What they want is to put a 1-year pause on any further takeovers. And the idea through a bill that's been recently introduced is that they would put a 1-month pause, put a 1-year pause, put together a working group to figure out how do we prevent this issue going forward. Now, obviously, there is going to continue to be needs for upgrades in systems. They're not saying that that should not happen at all, but they need to review the law that was enacted in 2016 and try to correct for some of these unintended consequences that have happened as a result.
I can't help but think it was, I think a little over 10 years ago in Brazil, there were actually promos running on television encouraging people to avoid flushing and save water by urinating in the shower. So we haven't come to any proposals like that yet, have we, in Pennsylvania?
No, not yet. The most controversial is probably tying rate increases to voter referendums, but certainly we have not faced the level of rationing that maybe you've even seen out west in droughts or, down in South America, like you just mentioned.
So I guess the bottom line here for people in Exeter Township and other communities that are facing this, is there any immediate relief in sight? I mean, the pause may help, so to speak, or at least for some period of time till a better fix can be found. But in the meantime, is there any way to help people deal with these bills that have suddenly gotten so high, as you said, especially with the other inflation and other affordability issues that people are dealing with?
Unfortunately, other than self-rationing, there isn't much that residents can do other than budget more for their water bills, but that's not as simple as it sounds. And unfortunately, just like so many other parts of this economy, it ultimately falls on the taxpayer to make up the difference. This is why we do what we do at the Center Square, to continue to follow what is hitting you in the wallet. And in Pennsylvania, that affordability word that's really taken up space in the legislature. This is just one of those things that continues to be left on the backs of taxpayers with no end in sight.
One of the issues discussed in Ford's story involved fair market value type valuations that are used to buy distressed systems. And again, we've seen that dynamic play out in some other states as well. And so there was talk from a representative from the National Association of State Utility Consumer Advocates from Tennessee said that commissions, it had to do with commissioners or commissions considering rate impact of acquisitions at the time, so that these types of things could be addressed before a sale goes through. So it looks like that may be part of this legislation.
Yes, and that is a more complex that's a more complex solution than I think that we have time to get into, but absolutely that's another piece of this. Like I said, it's a complex problem with a lot of issues to resolve. It's not just a matter of corporate greed taking over these water systems. It's very much how do they save these systems from themselves without pushing all of that onto ratepayers.
Yeah, and I guess when you talk about infrastructure dollars, this is one of those situations where using them properly and but at the same time making sure things are maintained also plays into that equation, because if what the private companies are saying is that they had to do all this work, well then I guess it would lead you to believe that something had to be done. At the same time, if that money was budgeted when these were under government control and those upgrades weren't happening, then that brings, again, we're really getting into the weeds here, but this could bring up a whole new set of questions. I guess perhaps that's why there's this pause, because there's so many questions still to be answered, right, Christen?
Yeah, Pennsylvania loves to answer questions with a working group, generally for a year or 18 months. So this is just a typical pattern for us, although it truly is a problem that lawmakers have been grappling with for years. So this is really the first step in the direction of addressing this. So even though it doesn't sound like much, a group to get together and talk about the problems that we're already talking about here, it is a positive step forward to potentially having legislation that would go somewhere to help fix this problem.
Well, we certainly hope that something can happen, because then I'm sure this is, as these acquisitions happen, this may affect other states. We've seen more isolated cases in Illinois, but we haven't seen, I don't think, those kind of numbers and those kind of water bills. And so it's just going to make me think twice before I get to refill my glass here. But, Christen, fantastic work as always. Thank you so much for joining us and shedding some light on this. More on this story at thecentersquare.com, and we'll continue to monitor that. So continue to keep an eye on Pennsylvania and other states around the country that deal with these water issues at thecentersquare.com.